Some of you may already tried the Constitution quiz, but for fun, we thought we'd test out a few of the questions together tonight. We'll read the questions aloud, and then you just shout out what you think the answer is. How does that sound?
Good.
I see David McCullough's book. I gave him an honorary degree when I was running the university.
For our first question,
He kept me laughing for 3 days. Man, it's hilarious. Yeah, he's dead now, but it's he was a lot of fun.
And you guys just need to raise your hand, and I'll come up to you with the mic, and you say the answers. And guesses are welcome.
6.
Close.
Multiple choice, which helped a lot.
Yeah, I missed one. I don't remember which one I missed.
4. Who said 4? Yes, you were correct. It was 4. For the second question, how many states had to ratify the Constitution before it became law?
9.
9. Yes, it was 9. And then for our last question, which 2 amendments cancel each other out?
Guys, please raise your hands so I can come up to you with the mic. 19 and 21? Close. 18 and 21? That's correct. Hey, there's actually, oh, that's loud. There's actually 2 answers if anybody wants to try for the second one, too. Yes, good job. What is the highest law of the United States? Yes, it's the Constitution. What foreign language is used in the Constitution? Latin is the correct answer.
Thanks for playing along. That was just a little warm-up in honor of the Constitution Week, which the Daughters of the American Revolution and our local mayors have officially proclaimed here in Dyer County. Thank you to the Daughters of the Revolution. Sorry. And now it's our privilege to introduce our presenter for the evening, Dr. Mathew Stafford. Please join us in welcoming him.
Sorry, I'm in your spot.
That's all right.
Sorry, guys. Excuse me.
Last week, some people said they couldn't hear me, so I bought a really cheap mic. So isn't that something? This is 2 for $50. I was really amazed. So I'm going to have to refer to notes. I had surgery a few weeks ago, and I'm on pain medication. So if your head starts to swell or you float above me, and I'll just be looking up. First off, thanks. I think it's nice that we have rules for this thing, but we chose to live here. We chose to settle here 5 years ago, and I found the people in Dyersburg wonderful. I cannot believe we would ever have a problem here. I know that probably everybody in America thinks that about their town, but I'm so proud to be amongst you, and I really think the world of you folks. You have welcomed me and made my family feel at home, so thank you for that. This is what we're going to talk about tonight. Last week I talked about values and philosophical underpinnings. Today I'm going to talk about historical underpinnings. And it's going to go deep. I'm sorry about that. I have my submarine. Last time we were at the surface, it was kind of fun and light and you could see birds flying. Not so much today. We'll go to some dark places. They're tough times. And a lot of Americans fail to realize there's about 150 years of a period of history being made between the settlement in Jamestown and Plymouth and the time that we're actually starting our revolution. Most of you in high school history just kind of jumped over that in a paragraph. There's a lot happening there, and it is inculcating those values that are going to be represented when we finally get into our first governing document, the Articles of Confederation, which we'll hit tonight. Next week, we'll go even deeper with the Framers' Constitution, and we'll actually go through the entire document. It's not as boring as it sounds. Embedded in that document are all these interesting stories and all these things that come out from behind those words. And then the last week is about a 250-mile-an-hour run through American history on the evolution of the Constitution to today. And that's interesting too. You'll hear about people and things and interesting ideas that you might not have heard about before, because we kind of skip over those in the history books too. So that's what tonight. Before I get started, I have to tell you I'm a historian. If you're a doctor or a lawyer or a maintenance person or a librarian, whatever you do, you have a way of thinking about the world. Historians have a way of thinking about the world too, and we think different. So I'd like to show you how historians think, so that hopefully you'll use the analytical lenses of the historian as you're starting sifting through what is often very biased newscasts today. So try to approach them from multiple angles, put on multiple lenses, and try to figure out what the real story is. For this, I want to use just a standard mill. And I'd like to posit to you that we all know the water runs downhill and makes the wheel turn. I want you to suspend your scientific understanding of gravity for a moment, and I'd like you to say that no, it's not the water pushing the wheel, it's the wheel pushing the water. Okay? So, what the historian will say is there's lots of different views of how that water is pushed. We have the biographical view, and that's the great man theory or the great woman theory. It's the origins of history lie in biography. That's the first histories that are written. And biographical historians tend to lean towards individuals to tell the story of history, using those lives as a window on the world. I have to tell you, it's a lot of fun, because history is HI story. And the story of these people is absolutely fascinating. I got addicted to biographical history when I was a kid. My PhD dissertation is a biography. Then there's political historians. They deal with the struggle for power within society. That's what politics is. And sometimes it's cantankerous and nasty, and sometimes it's really interesting how people fall together over different things. So that's the political historian. Then there's the diplomatic historian, and this is the struggle for power, ideas, and influence between societies. So we'll have different people. England and America are going to have a diplomatic relationship before they have a warring relationship. The economic history, you can think back to James Carville. It's all about the economy, stupid. The economic historian will say, no, it's always about wealth. It's always about greed. It's always about getting something. And that's what motivates the politicians, and that's what motivates diplomacy. The next group will say, nah, you're wrong. It's social historians. It's the individuals. It's the individuals who make or lose economic wealth, who form political parties. It's all about, and this is what we often call bottom-up history. And bottom-up history is really illuminating, because it's things you didn't know. So the great man theory will talk about Grant and Lee. The bottom-up historians will say, no, I want to talk about the people in the ranks of the Confederate and the Union Army. The technological historian's a lot of fun. They'll say, you're all wrong, because they always say you're all wrong. You're all wrong. It's about the technology. You do not have a Roman Empire until the Romans, who are defeated by the Greeks early on. The Greeks are using the Greek phalanx with the long poles, right? And they're going forth and they're stabbing people. And the Romans can't do anything when they first encounter them, because they're stuck in the poles. So what do the Romans do? They shorten their sword to 18 inches. They call it the gladius. They hack the tops off the spears, walk up, and then hack up the hoplites. They take over the entire world with an 18-inch sword. It's a simplistic view, but it's interesting. And you can talk about that, and we continue to move through technological change, specifically when you get to military history. I am a military historian. Military historians will claim it's all about war. You can have political, diplomatic, and economic, and even social problems, but until there's a war, nothing's solved. And that's why we define our history is the American Revolution, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam. We divide history by the wars. And the weakness of that argument, as I'll show you, is there's a lot of wars we just don't track. Then there's the theological religious history, and this will say that God is influencing what's happening on the earth, and not just in a passive way, but a very active way. One of these is Peter Marshall. Peter Marshall writes that George Washington at the Battle of the Monongahela, he rushes out and he's trying to save Braddock's forces. The Indian chief on the other side of the river says, shoot that man, he's in charge. And he's a big target, because this man is over 6 feet tall at a time when the average man's about 5'8". So they shoot him repeatedly. And bullets go through his coat. They shoot the horse out from under him. One takes his hat, and nothing hits him. And the chief says, stop. He's protected by the Great Spirit. Don't waste your time. And they go off shooting British. At the battle, when they're in New York and he has to flee, a strange fog comes in, hides their escape, and then the fog goes out. That's the Peter Marshall theory. Then there's another group. This is an island downstream. They don't push any water at all. They just come to see what floats down the stream. And they pick it up and they analyze it, okay? And they're the cultural historians, and they're fun to spend time with, but if the law enforcement's around, you have to watch what they're smoking, because that's where they are. It's the cultural historians who discovered adolescence. Adolescence didn't exist at the time of the Chicago World's Fair, the Great White City that they built in Chicago. However, it did exist just 25 years later or so when Coney Island was built. And so they said, why do we have adolescence at Coney Island and we don't have adolescence here? And they started to look and they traced it back, and it was excess time and excess wealth. More time, more wealth you have, the more likely you are to have adolescence. And now, you know, when I was a kid, adolescence lasted until about 18 to 21. My brother pushed it to 30. So now it seems to be a lifelong pursuit. But nevertheless, they'll look at art, they'll look at music, they'll look at fashion, they'll look at film, they'll look at toys, which is kind of fun. The toys that the people are playing with at the time show you a lot. And they'll look at architecture. Basically, they'll look at anything. And you'll learn a lot from what a society leaves behind. So, with that all in mind, I'm going to start with this map to say this is where we are. Last week I talked about Jamestown, founded in 1607, and Plymouth in 1620. We get Georgia in on this in 1732. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you can see how this new world is split up. Kind of the sad portion of the story is supposedly all this belongs to Spain. They claimed it first. And we just kind of ignore that. Pardon us, scoot over, pardon us, scoot over. And managed to take the eastern seaboard. Now, are the Spanish concerned? They don't like it, but you know what they're getting out of Mexico that we're not getting out of North America? Gold. And they're getting a lot of it. And we keep thinking we're going to get gold. We don't. There is a gold rush in North Georgia. I don't know if you knew that or not, but that's kind of really interesting when they have the gold rush. And the Cherokee Indians are not real happy about that because they don't see any need to dig it out of the ground. This is a modern view of the United States from space. Isn't it pretty? Those are the big cities are all lit up. The closer they come to being white, the more populous they are. I created the next satellite map. That's the early 1700s. You have to understand that the people who came here faced darkness. They faced what they considered evil. There was death in the forests at night. Indians were prowling around there. There were panthers, there were bears, there were all sorts of things out there. And it's going to affect the way that America evolves. You know, I bought some books over there and put them on the table for you to consider. One of the most interesting books to me is this guy who's arguing about, he's kind of a cultural historian, he's arguing the farm practices of North America and how they change. And he said the foundational moment in U.S. history is when we build fences to keep the pigs in instead of to keep the pigs out. That's when we become a civilized nation. So that's the kind of stuff you get from cultural historians. And I'm sure he was high as a kite when he wrote it, but it's a lot of fun. But for our purposes, I want you to know that beyond your flickering torch or later your flickering whale oil lantern, there's darkness out there, there's evil, and possibly even death. So the people who are going west are extraordinarily brave. So I want to start through all the different discoveries that come. And boy, there's a laundry list for you. In 1579, Sir Francis Drake is on the California coast, and he finds the New Albion, and it's Albion Bay. And if you've ever been to northern California, north of San Francisco, you can still see Albion Bay and several things named after Francis Drake today. And of course, like everybody, he's going to claim it on behalf of Albion, which is another ancient word for Britain. You know about the Roanoke colony. Sir Walter Raleigh comes to Roanoke Island. He doesn't come. He sends people to Roanoke because you don't want to get your feet dirty, I guess. But nevertheless, 115 English settlers settle on Roanoke Island. And they start to run out of food, so John White goes back to England. He gets caught up in a war. He can't make it back real fast. 3 years later, he comes back and finds that they're all gone. And there's one word carved into a tree, Croatoan. and he has no idea what Croatoan means. There are a group of Indians that were at the time referred to as Croatoans, and there's a historical society in North Carolina that has dug up two sites, sites X and Y, that have remnants of English settlements from that time period. It's not been positively confirmed. However, the most likely scenario is they started running out of food and supplies and they headed for the mainland and all died off. What they're looking for now is DNA evidence from the surviving Indian populations near there. There was an Indian village that shows that there's English DNA. Bartholomew Gosnold lands in New England. I do not know why we don't have Bartholomew Gosnold Day. I think we need a Bartholomew Gosnold Day. He is the guy who settles in New England. He names Cape Cod because of all the fish. He names Martha's Vineyard because of his daughter Martha and the fact that there's so many grapes there. He's convinced that we can make it go in New England. And he's going to push really hard when he gets home to try to get a Virginia company to come over here and settle. And yes, he is one of the people who's going to push for the Virginia settlements. He opposed the Jamestown. He was with the Jamestown people. He was one of the admirals of one of the three ships. He opposed the settlement at Jamestown. He said this land is unsafe. Like I told you last week, they had brackish water and there were Indians all around. He said it's not safe to live here. They didn't believe him. He proved his point. 4 months later, he died. Nevertheless, Jamestown, you know, where they think they found Gosnold's grave now. Talked about that last week. It's a disaster. You're going to have that, and I'll get down to the starving time later. But basically, they managed to offend each other. They managed to offend the Indians, and nature takes a horrible, horrible backlash at them. The starving time, they start with 500 people at the beginning of that winter. At the end of winter, they have 61. The Poppin settlement in 1607, there's another one a lot of people haven't heard of. This is a group of Europeans, Englishmen, who came there and settled, and they decided they could build ships. So they do. They build a small pinnace that's named the Virginia. It sails back to England. It's later going to be a resupply ship for the Jamestown colony. And these people are doing fairly well, but they don't feel like they're doing fairly well. They stay for 14 months, they all pack up and they all go home. Then you have Henry Hudson, the Dutchman. He's going to come over. He's going to settle, explore the Hudson River. And of course, he's going to open up the way for Dutch settlements. Eventually, that's where New York's going to be. He's going to find Hudson Bay and Hudson Strait. He's always looking for the route that he can go west, you know, the Great Northwest Passage. Eventually, he's going to be out in Hudson Bay. His men are going to mutiny. They put him and a few non-mutineers on a boat with this kid. They sail off into the sunset and they're never seen again. There are beliefs that the boat was found that had bloodstains on it. So he may have not been alive when he set off. But nevertheless, that's Henry Hudson. He's going to set the time. The starving time, the Jamestonians never expected. Remember, they were all those gentlemen, and the gentlemen don't like to work. So we were running about 30 to 50% gentlemen, and then you add on to that another 10% to servants. They're not working either. And so you have no one who's planting and harvesting and doing the things you need to do to keep a society. They're all sitting back, cleaning their fingernails and smoking their pipes, and they're really happy. So they start to go into the starving time. They alienate the Indians. I told you it's really brutal on both sides. There's horrific things done to the Indians. They even dig up Indian corpses and take the corn that was buried with the corpses, defiling those graves. So there's not a lot of happy people here. That's going to go into the starving time because the Indians aren't going to support them. They have one relief crew that comes in. It comes in too late, brings more settlers, more mouths to feed, and not enough food. Finally, in 1610, they say that's it. The 61 survivors get on the boats. One of them is the Virginia that was built up in the Popham settlement. They start to sail away. They get to the mouth of the bay, and an English ship is coming the other way. They see it, they stop, and they say, yeah, we're here with your supplies. So they all turn around, they go back to Jamestown, and it saves the Jamestown colony from disaster. But I mean, it's just two ships passing, literally two ships passing at the mouth of the James River, or we wouldn't have a Jamestown story to tell you. The Dutch established Manhattan Island Trading Center. You've heard about it. The Dutch trade to buy Manhattan. Some Indians are passing by. They don't own the island. They were just visiting the island, but they got some free trinkets. So they went back home and said, hey, I met these white guys. They're not very smart. Nevertheless, Dutch established New Netherland, and New Netherland is eventually going to evolve, and we're going to see Dutch settlements. The interesting thing about them, talking about their values, they're far more permissive in their religious beliefs. Other people are welcome. Plus, they want to get along with the Indians. The Dutch and the French want to get along with the Indians. The Americans and the English, not so much. John Rolfe. You'll probably remember John Rolfe because he was married to Pocahontas. Now, that was his big thing. He takes her to England. Of course, she dies when she's over in England. But nevertheless, John Rolfe is the guy who said, hey, you know what we can grow here? We can grow tobacco. And they grow tons of tobacco. John Rolfe gets extraordinarily wealthy. And that's going to save the Jamestown colony in the long term. In 1619, the first enslaved Africans in the Virginia House of Burgess founded. Now, you've heard of the 1619 Project. That's what it's based on. They weren't slaves. They were indentured servants. They're listed on the rolls as indentured servants. We don't see the use of the word slave regularly until 1661. And so that's interesting. Could they get free? I'll talk about that in a moment. 1620, we have the Mayflower Compact. I talked about that last week, which is kind of this, hey, let's all work together. Let's put society above our individual wants and needs. Doesn't that sound nice? and we will press ahead. You're going to hear that same sentiment as we get into James Madison's thinking. King James, Anthony Johnson, the Black Patriarch. He's an indentured servant. He works real hard. His owner is really impressed with him. He says, okay, you've paid back your debt. I'm going to give you some land to start, and for the land, you'll pay me back some stuff. He becomes extraordinarily wealthy. He goes up to Maryland, and he's a wealthy man, and he founds a colony of free black men, and he's called, because of that, the Black Patriot. So we don't see the slavery there, race-based or lifelong, until later. New Amsterdam is founded by the Dutch West India Company. It's going to turn into New York. You know about that. And I hope you get to go to New York sometime because two things. One, you get to see all the fancy buildings and all the neat things, walk on Broadway, all that stuff. And second, you'll appreciate Dyersburg. Oh, so much more. I did a week-long dissertation research in New York City, paid for by the federal government. That's a long story. But the one thing that amazed me is there were two buildings, and on the third story of each building, there was trash stacked up against the building, and it coped down to the first floor. And it was all just trash between two buildings. I imagine it was 70, 80 tons of trash. Massachusetts Bay Colony and Boston are founded, John Winthrop. John Winthrop's an interesting guy. John Winthrop's, before he goes, he's talking about, we're going to build a city on the hill. He's citing scripture when he's talking about it. But when John Winthrop says that, it's not the Ronald Reagan city on the hill, we are going to be a beacon of hope for all the world. John Winthrop was saying, as Christ was saying, that everybody is going to be watching us. And if we don't adhere closely to God's rules, we're going to let down the world. So it's kind of interesting how that's changed over time. But the Massachusetts Bay Colony is coming in. These people are Puritans. They are not the Pilgrims. They are not the Separatists. They're different people. The Pilgrims and the Separatists believe that the English church is foul and evil, and they don't want any part of it. They want to break away. The Puritans, they are a part of the English church. They just think it needs to be purified. And these people are in a constant state of purification. It's all that they're worried about day after day. I told you last week that if they made New Settlement, they had to get permission, get a pastor, 5 families, go and build a church, and that they could expand, but without permission, they couldn't go. Virginia, you could go anywhere you want. You might get killed by Indians. It's dark out there, but, you know, it's different. But in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, it's very, very controlled, very, very centralized type of thinking. They're going to eventually eat Salem. After the Salem witchcraft trials, it's just going to kind of gobble it up, and it's going to be all part of the same colony. Maryland's founded in 1634. We're right in the middle of big wars in Europe. We're going to start another one. The Catholics are being persecuted, and the English king allows Maryland to be founded, a refuge for British Catholics. And it's going to stay fairly Catholic well up into the late 19th century. Theologian Roger Williams is banished. Roger Williams. What did he report to say that was so offensive? Well, separation of church and state, religious freedom, and I've got to read my own writing here. Rejecting the confiscation of Indian property without settlement. That's what he was for, and that's why they got rid of Roger Williams. So he goes to Rhode Island. And Rhode Island is going to be a respite for all the people who don't fit into this society that we're building in New England. And it's kind of interesting. Williams gets along great with the Indians. And in fact, the relationship between the Americans and the Indians is nowhere better than in Rhode Island. And it becomes something of a sanctuary. Now, there's people escaping to live with the Indians all along Virginia and particularly in Massachusetts. They're usually young men. They decide that they like the Indian way of life far better than they're living as Englishmen among Indians, and no one's trying to kill anybody. No one's having any problem with that. So, 1936, Rhode Island is founded officially. Connecticut colony is founded, and Harvard's founded. Harvard's got a long history, and it's based on the English schools. And we wanted to have that too. Starts as a religious college. It's going to expand out later. 1648. There's a book over there on the table, and I'm not moving around as much tonight because my friend over here said, "Could you just hold still?" But Anne Hutchinson starts what's called the antinomian controversy. And what it is, antinomianism is antinomian. Nomianism is a strict legalistic adherence to Scripture. And what she's claiming under the works of John Cotton, who she followed over from England, is that these Puritans, all they want to do is talk about salvation through works. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to spend so much time in church, you get hit in the head with a knocker if you're a man, if you go to sleep, you get tickled with a feather if you're a woman. Nevertheless, she says this is all BS, although I'm sure she didn't say BS. Nevertheless, she is a very powerful speaker, and she starts to host these meetings in her home, and pretty soon women are coming, and pretty soon men are coming, and she's got a bigger turnout than the local clergy. How's that go over? Not too good. They come for Anne. They go ahead and try her. She defends herself. It doesn't go real well, and she's sent away. She's exiled from the community, which is the worst thing can happen to you if you're Puritan, so they think. She hooks up with Roger Williams down in Rhode Island. And she's going to stay in Rhode Island up until the Puritans start to spread out a little bit more, and it looks like they're going to encroach on Rhode Island. She knows what they're like. She doesn't want to be a part of that. She goes to live in New Amsterdam. And she takes her family to live in New Amsterdam, and she's surprised and ultimately killed to find out that the Indians there are nowhere near as friendly as they were back in Rhode Island. She and several of her children are killed. There is a 10-mile river that runs through the Bronx, New York. It's called Hutchinson River. It's named after Anne Hutchinson. They're very proud. Then we have the Virginia slave laws of 1661. They're based on the slave laws that come out of Barbados, and they're English there too. And what's happened is Barbados needs slaves, and it can't have this thing where we free them because, one, there's no place to put them. And so we need to keep them in perpetual slavery. So what they do is they pass this law that says, unlike English common law, where the rights go down through the father, for slaves, and that's what they're calling them now, the rights are going to go through the mother. So if you're born to a mother and she's a slave, you're a slave. There's nothing you can do about it. You're not going to get free. The people in Virginia say, hey, that's a really good idea, because they've got a labor problem too. And so they do the same thing. This is where we see the birth of institutional slavery, race-based slavery, chattel slavery, all those things that are eventually going to tear our nation apart. Is not in 1619, it's actually in 1661. Oops, went the wrong way. So next I'm going to take the economic historian's view. Those lines look like they're separate, that the ships are passing each other by several hundred miles. They're not. The lines, they go both ways, but to make it clearer for you, the wonderful folks there at Joyce Appleby decided that they would do it this way. America is shipping over raw materials, lumber, fish. Dried fish is a big thing. If you're on the banks of Cape Cod, it's dried fish all over, and you can smell it for a long way off. Whale oil, and whale oil is going to become increasingly important up until the time we get the natural oils like kerosene and stuff. Gunpowder, they're making gunpowder. What do you need for gunpowder? Saltpeter. What is saltpeter? Bat guano, bat droppings, because it's got the nitrogen that you need to make this. And we've got K's, we've got bat guano. All right. Did you ever think that you'd get, if you hear somebody that is bat blank crazy, there's people in the early Americans who are bat blank wealthy. Nevertheless, rice, tobacco, and indigo. In return, we're buying manufactured goods and luxuries. We don't have the mechanism for production, so we send the raw materials over, and they send us back the stuff that's built. And they charge us an arm and a leg for it, but that's beside the point. We send flour, fish, and meat down into the islands, into the West Indies, and they give us back mostly slaves, but also sugar. And sugar's a big thing. It's driving. There's not a lot of spices back in this time period. And in fact, spice is a really important thing. Spice is more important prior to the creation of refrigeration. Okay, so when you are traveling the world, the closer you get to the equator, the more spicy and delicious the food is, because it hides the taste of rotten meat. Whereas if you go very far north into Norway, they feed you lutefisk. Have you eaten lutefisk? It's awful. It's a little hunk of dried white fish. It tastes like a fishy saltine cracker kind. Anyway, yeah. And this is why you don't probably have a British cookbook in your home, but you have like several Italian cookbooks in your home, is because of refrigeration. Thus the technological historian, by the way. Okay, so the enslaved persons, gold and pepper are coming over. Why pepper? Because it's close to the equator. So anywhere that you're near the equator, they're going to grow some peppers. And sugar, molasses, and fruit are going there. And all this stuff is working great. It's just a wonderful system. What could possibly upset that system? We are a people perpetually at war. I bet there's wars on there you've never even heard of. But we've been fighting since we founded this country. Each other, the Indians, the English, the French, pretty much anybody will stand up against us, we're going to have a war with them. 1607, 1615 is the Tarentine War. You can see that's before we settled Plymouth. Why is it important? Well, the Penobscots, Kennebec, Abenaki, Pawtucket tribes fight the Tarentines, Micmac, Tchicham, and Maliseet tribes, and they're going at it in southern Maine and northern New England. Okay? And all of a sudden something happens which is called the Great Dying. It's probably smallpox introduced by French sailors who are getting caught off the coast. We don't know what killed them, but it wipes out a huge percentage of the population. The Micmacs go back into Maine, they take it with them, and because of this Tarentine War where they all got together like your kids in kindergarten, they passed this disease around and it wiped out about 75% of the Native Americans in New England. So when the Puritans got there and said, God has dropped all the vegetation for us, there's places to plant, it's ready, it's for us, he obviously wanted us to settle here. No, you're walking over the bodies of dead Indians who died because of the French carried scarlet fever or smallpox, whatever it was. Interesting footnote, have you read Pet Sematary by Stephen King? Right? Ah, there you go. The name of the Indian tribe that built the Pet Sematary was the Micmacs, because King is from Maine, so he went back to Micmac heritage. A shout out to Stephen King there. The Pequot War, 1637. This is colonists from Connecticut and Massachusetts. They're aligned with the Mohegan tribe and Narragansett tribe, and you'll listen very closely because Narragansett's going to come up again. They managed to tick them off really quickly, and they fight the Pequot and Neantic tribes. It doesn't go real well for anybody. It's not a good idea to fight them, but the Puritans needed some stuff. Those people had some stuff, so they took some stuff, and the Pequots didn't like it, and that started the war. The Puritans are unlike a lot of missionaries that you see. This is not an evangelical society. They believe that Christ is coming back, possibly next week, possibly tomorrow, possibly now. The knock on your door may be Christ coming to take you away. I just need to purify myself. I do not have time to convert you. So their attitude towards the Indians is rather unique for what we would consider the contemporary Christian who's empowered by the Bible to go out and do something. King Philip's War. King Philip is just the name that they call the Metacom, the chief. It's fought between the colonists in Massachusetts and Connecticut against the Wampanoag Indians led by Metacom and their allies who are now the Narragansetts. The Narragansetts have been managed to be ticked off in less than 40 years, and they're going to war with the same Puritans that they fought alongside. King William's War. King William's War is the first of 4 wars fought between Britain and France. We're a British colony, so we're going to fight on the side of the British. Okay? This is all going to culminate with the war you're most familiar with, French-Indian War, but this is the first of these, and it's kind of laying down the pathway that we're going to go. In Europe, it's known as the War of the League of Augsburg, or the 9 Years' War, and it's very difficult to track all those 7 years, 9 years, 30 years, 100 years wars that go on in England. It's also called the War of the Grand Alliance. Colonists from Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New York gather to try to throw the French out and actually take some territory in Canada, which is later going to be given back. It's a non-conclusive war. And they go to peace from 1697 for a full 5 years. Before we go into Queen Anne's War, we're fighting again. This is the second of 4 wars between England and France. The French and Indians make sporadic raids along the New English borders. The South Carolina militia destroys a Spanish town of St. Augustine, because we're getting the Spanish involved in this. The French and the Spanish attack Charleston, South Carolina, and the British capture the French port in Arcadia. Armistice was declared in 1712. The war is finally over in 1713. Not everybody gets the word. Communications are kind of bad. And you're going to hear that frequently, like when Andrew Jackson wins the Battle of New Orleans after we've already signed the peace treaty. Oops! Then we go to Queen Anne's War, Drummer's War. Make sure I get it right. The war was a series of battles between New England colonies and the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Micmacs, and they're now fighting against us, the Maliseet, the Penobscot, and the Abenaki, who are allied with French. French and Dutch get along with Indians. Americans and English don't. The Indians have seen these white people come over, and they are as multiple, the multitude like the falling of leaves. And so they want them gone because they're a real pain. They shoot your deer, they foul your water. They're a real problem. We have to get rid of these. So you're going to see a lot of these Indian wars, and the Indian wars are going to continue as long as we're moving west. The New Englanders were primarily led by Massachusetts Lieutenant Governor William Drummer, for who the war gets its name. It involves a large number of tribal chiefs, many who did not get the word when the thing ended, but Drummer signs a treaty, and it's so important for how these people are going to live beside the Indians that every treaty signed for the next 30 years had to sit down and have Drummer's treaty read to them. Oops, got to get to Fort Gower. The War of Jenkins' Ear. Robert Jenkins is a guy he's a minor officer on a British ship. There is basically a Spanish Coast Guard that comes aboard, and if you have any Spanish possessions whatsoever, they kill you. And he doesn't have anything, but they do find one golden doubloon on a ship, and so there's a sword fight, and he gets his ear cut off. And it doesn't seem to be a big deal because it happens 8 years before this in 1731. However, we decide, as the English, that we would like to have some of that Spanish gold. So we start a war to try to take on the Spanish gold, and it's going to be a big deal because what we want to try to do is get the Spanish out of their holdings, but also to get them out of ours. We want to kick them out of Florida. Oglethorpe, who's going to found the Georgia colony, he actually leads a raid down towards St. Augustine, Florida. It doesn't count to much. He comes back, but the Spanish come back at him, and they attack him, and he defends South Carolina. And to this day, every year, there is a celebration on it's called the Battle of Bloody Marsh, but there's a celebration at a mansion called Cranham Hall where they celebrate Oglethorpe's victory. Now, Oglethorpe leaves. He goes and fights for the British, the Jacobite Rebellion. My friend back there will know that she and I have a real interest in the Jacobite Rebellion. He's accused of war crimes, and so he manages to shake those off. However, when he fights in the 7 Years' War, he changes his name. So I don't think he shook it off the way that you think he did. King George's War. King George's War is the third of 4 French and English wars, and this one's for control of North America. So we have this is also in conjunction with the War of Austrian Secession over there in England, and it lasts until 1748. We signed the Treaty of Louisbourg, and it fails to resolve any of the outstanding territorial issues, so we're going to fight the French and Indian War, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But first I want to talk about Lord Dunmore's war. Lord Dunmore's war is caused by the settlement into Tennessee. So you probably should know this Tennessee history, and I don't know if they teach it in Tennessee schools because I didn't grow up there. But raise your hand if you've heard of Lord Dunmore's war in high school. Okay, there's 1, 2, all right. So what you have here is Daniel Boone. He wants to lead a group of 50 settlers over the mountains, and this is after the British have said you can't go over the mountains. They've got the partition line, and they said this is all Indian territory, don't go there, but Boone's going to go there. And he sends his son and one of his son's friends back for supplies. The Indians find them, they torture them to death. News of the horror that is those 2 young boys' bodies goes back and makes the papers in Charleston and Baltimore, and we decide that we're going to fight a war. And so we send Dunsmore there, and he goes in and manages to quell the rebellion and settle this. But he is upset that the British have told him he can't go there because it's over the proclamation line. So he cites this charter. He creates this charter. Oops, went the wrong way. Fort Gower resolves, because it's at Fort Gower. Resolve, will bear the most faithful allegiance to His Majesty King George III, while His Majesty delights to reign over us brave and free. However, comma, there's the but, at the love of liberty and attachment to the real interest and just rights of America outweigh every other consideration, including our loyalty to our beloved Zeech. For the defense, we will exert every power within us for the defense of American liberty and for the support and just rights and privileges. And what they're saying there is we will raise arms against King George to protect our liberty. This is the first indication that things are going horribly awry for the British. Okay, and it's broadcast. They understand this. These people have now claimed that they're willing to fight us. Then we have the 7 Years' War. There's the proclamation line that I told you about running along the Appalachian. I'll give you a better example. You can see that we're going to fight back the French. The French are going to pair with the Indians, which is why we call it the French-Indian War. We have some Indian allies. They have a lot more. We're trying to push the French out of North America. It goes fairly well for us. As a result of this, we English, we're going to take Canada. We're going to take territory that we didn't have before. We're going to push back and open the door for Western settlement, except, of course, the British have that proclamation line of 1763, Treaty of Paris, and we're not going to be able to go over that. So you can see there's the Dutch, Hudson Bay Company. You still have some Dutch in New York. You still have this Indian Reserve proclaimed by the British, although the French will tell you that some of that is theirs too. Then you have Spanish Louisiana, but notice all that stuff in the middle, all that stuff that we're later going to buy for France, that map doesn't show it because we claim that we own it. There's something that's happening here, and we get back to values, and this is interesting. This is the Great Awakening. And the Great Awakening is this wonderful moment in our history when we decide to have this, what's it doing now? Where we decide to have this religious conversion experience. Something popped up on there and I'm trying to get rid of it. Maybe if I hit this. We'll come back. I'm not technology gifted. All right. There, super. So this is George Whitefield. He's there. He's preaching to these people. These people are coming to be saved. And this is where we start to hear the term about redemption and being saved. This is a very, very evangelical type of approach to religion. These people are emotive. There's people who are speaking in tongues, who are falling down in trance. There's healings. It's happening outside. There's not a lot of entertainment at this time period, so maybe that concludes. But there's sometimes thousands of people there to listen to him. He becomes like the Sermon on the Mount, standing up there and shouting out to the people what's going on. The world of the Americans is starting to devolve into two camps. The old lights, what we might call today the frozen chosen. The people who go to church and have a liturgy and they stand up and they sit down and they listen and they sing the same songs. And these other people who are extraordinarily emotive. And those people are going to start to see the world in a different way. Some of this, though, is about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And you should have a personal relationship with the people who have power over you. That's going to influence a lot of these early Americans to think, I ought to have a personal relationship with the people who run my country. And you're going to see that manifest itself too. So let's talk about the road to independence here. We have the Royal Proclamation line. That is a really offensive thing because Americans, they want to go and grow. It comes out of our Virginia heritage. Remember, when we decided that there's too many people living on my street in Virginia, I just packed up and I moved west. And I carved some land out there, and if the Indians didn't kill me, I made a living at it. So that's Virginia value is still present in our resistance to the Royal Proclamation line. And Britain is going to try again and again and again to keep us in a box. In 1764, we get the Sugar Act. The Sugar Act is an indirect tax at a very hard time. There's an economic downturn in America right there. Everybody uses sugar. Fortunately, what we've got that not everybody's got is we've got a long, unprotected coast. The British can't possibly stop us, and Americans become the greatest smugglers on the face of the earth. If you want it, you can get it. You just go down to the beach and it's a-coming. So there's a lot of that going on. The British are livid with us. They try to get other money. And all this money, by the way, is to pay for their role in the French-Indian Wars. We fought that war for you people. You should do something to pay us back. So that's what it's all about. They pass a currency act. You can't have your own currency. You have to use British currency. This is horrific if you're trying to run a business, because if you're trying to run a business, you need money. And the only money you can get is from overseas. And when the stuff comes in from overseas, you have to pay them. Normally by trading stuff, because you don't have the cash. So they're shutting down the economy. Everything has to be by barter. It's extraordinarily complicated. The Stamp Act. The Stamp Act is that. And who do they tick off with the Stamp Act? Anybody who uses paper, because that's what the paper on. So you're going after lawyers, you're going after teachers, you're going after educated people, and those people are going to turn on you. And they do. And this is where we start to hear the term no taxation without representation. The declaratory acts, they pull back the Stamp Act and they said, we're going to make this declaration that even though we've pulled these things back because you Americans were so much trouble, we still reserve the power to make rules over you. Okay, do they? We'll see. This is an interesting cartoon. It comes later, but I like the cartoon. The Indian on the ground who's having hot tea poured down her throat, that represents the United States. That is Parliament gathering around here saying, you will take it and like it. This is the map of that time period. I got the Declaration there, and you got the Indian Reserves. Just wanted to show you where we are in this. The Townshend Acts. The Townshend Acts are going to really take us off too. It's tariffs on paint, on lead, and on tea. And prior to banning lead, lead was in everything. When I was a kid, you bought anything and it had lead in it. Your paint had lead in it, your glue had lead in it, everything had lead on it, and come to find out it killed me. Apparently 17 years ago I died of lead poisoning, I don't know. But nevertheless, the world is a safer place now, but apparently it wasn't done in time for me to save my hair. 1770, the Townshend Acts are repealed. Not all of them, tea stays. They're going to still get us with tea. And the tea, one of the things is that the royal family owns a lot of land in India. And they're growing some second-rate tea. It's not good enough for England, but it's good enough for those Americans. So they stick it on a ship, they send it over here, and the Americans, they don't want it. They don't want your stinking tea, so they dress up like Indians in the night. They go up onto the deck and they throw. Oops, I skipped that one. They throw all the tea in the harbor, and George is incensed. He's absolutely outraged because they didn't do it to England. They did it to George. I skipped the Boston Massacre, the King Street incident. The King Street incident is interesting. It's a bunch of people who are harassing a young British soldier, and they're throwing snowballs at him. Some of the snowballs have rocks inside them or coal. And he calls for help. So all the men go running out onto the street, and more people gather. Now they're throwing more and more rocks. Eventually, they raise their rifles and they fire into the crowd. Okay? We are embarrassed by the misbehavior of our citizens. We give them the best lawyer that we've got, John Adams, second president of the United States. He defends them. The men get off fairly easy. One gets convicted of manslaughter, gets a brand burnt onto his arm. We're embarrassed of that, but nevertheless, Paul Revere is going to record that in his papers there, and that's Paul Revere's printing. This is a ghastly interpretation of what actually happened. It's far more of a chaotic moment than this, than the organized killing that you see right there. Talked about the Townshend Acts, the Coercive Acts. The Coercive Acts are the intolerable acts. And the intolerable acts, they're going to close Boston Port in retaliation for the Tea Party. The Massachusetts Charter is revoked. It's now become basically a royal colony. Massachusetts placed under military governor. We don't care about your House of Burgess. We don't care about your representation. And if you're tried for a crime, you have to be tried in England, which means you have to pay your own way over. You have to pay the way over for your witnesses, and otherwise they're just going to throw you away. And that is what finally sets the Americans off. They can't handle this anymore. That's the intolerable acts there. That's what the Bostonians see when they go out in the morning, is all these British warships around Boston. And Boston's a beautiful harbor, but you can imagine if you see all these ships out there that have guns pointed at you, how bad it could be. The Quebec Act in 1774 is an insult. It basically says that the area over the Ohio River, that we're not going to allow you to settle that, we don't want you to do anything. Benjamin Franklin, your big investment into the land in there, it becomes the not, because that's basically ours now. We're going to allow you to follow French justice there, which means you don't get a jury trial. This is just a slap in the face. It's an insult to Benjamin Franklin because the English are very unhappy with him. It's an insult to the United States of America. A lot of the patriots are going to cite the Quebec Act for the reason that they were radicalized, if you will. 5 September to 26 October 1774, the first Congress meets at Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia. The battles of Lexington and Concord, my wife and I went there. I encourage you to go. It's kind of a neat place. I have to say, on Lexington Green, there's a woman walking her dog, and I was horrified when the dog did what dogs do, and she just kept walking. But nevertheless, there's a little memorial there. Far more impressive is the bridge at Concord, which has been restored. You have the famous Minuteman statue in the shadows. The British go out. They burn through the small militia that forms at Lexington Green. They face a much bigger militia at Concord, and they are driven back with high casualties all the way back to Boston. And now we've got a shooting war. 15 May, the Second Continental Congress directs states to write their new constitutions. That's going to be important to the constitutional story because each of those places is putting their values into their new constitutions. And we're going to pick and choose lines from those as we write our own constitution. The 2 to 5 July, Second Continental Congress, and they're going to declare independence. That's the American Revolution in 3 phases. It starts off in New England for 75, 76. You can see the major battles. That doesn't work out for them. They lose in Saratoga, and they're going to move south, and the alliance in France after Saratoga, that's going to be kind of the end for it. Now we got the French on our side. Middle Atlantic phase, that's where they're going to take New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. That's where you have the winter of Valley Forge. That doesn't work for them. They decide that they're going to go south, and there's the southern campaigns. Eventually, that's not going to work for us too. They're going to get beat at the Battle of Yorktown. And I can spend an hour talking about Yorktown, and some of you have had to sit through that, so my apologies. But Treaty of Paris, and the British abandon New York finally, and that's when we have the climbing of the oiled pole, the greased pole, where the man climbs up and takes down the British Union Jack. That's a wrong Union Jack. The colors are wrong. That's the post-1801 Union Jack. Reverse the blue and the red, and you get the right one. And there you have the flag being taken down. They used to climb the pole in Boston every year on the anniversary of that. They stopped doing that now. So the Declaration of Independence, it's a unanimous declaration. These people are all in on it. And they're all in on telling England to get lost. It's necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which bind us. We're going to go ahead and tell you causes that impel us to separate. And this is where we get that wonderful line, we hold these truths to be self-evident. I told you where it came from last week. They lifted it right up out of that, except they changed property to happiness. Okay? And what do they mean by happiness? They mean balance, peace. They don't mean joy. And it's an Aristotelian view. Governments are instituted among men, deriving just powers from the consent of the governed. That's going to sound familiar. That's coming back. Okay? And it's their right to alter the government that they have created for themselves. Governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. So let us tell you the long train of abuses, George, that have led us to this momentous decision. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries. I'm just going to go and show you these. I'm not going to read all these things to you because they're best read with the sound of a teenager complaining about being told to clean their room.
And the way he sends armies over here, I tell you.
You know, there's a lot of whining in this document. And when you typically hear this thing read in public, they kind of skip this part. They go right to the end. He's dissolved representative houses like he did in Boston. He's made judges dependent on his will. He has affected to render military independence, imposing taxes. I mean, he's a bad guy. He's abolished a free system. He's abdicated government here by declaring protection and waging wars against us. He's sending mercenaries over here. By gosh. He has excited domestic insurrection amongst us. He is the cause of this war. And in every stage of these oppressions, we petition for help, and it gets worse. We representatives of the United, notice United is not capitalized, States of America and General Congress, we're basically declaring that we are free and independent states. And like free and independent states, we have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, and establish commerce, and we do all other acts that a native nation can do. This is our first struggle to tell the world that we're a government. And it's an exciting moment. That is what they want to do. With a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, and they will definitely pay. 4 are captured and tortured, 9 die of war-related wounds, 12 have their homes ransacked and burned, 4 lose sons. It's a horrible war. Ken Burns has a film coming out on the American Revolution this fall. I love Ken Burns' stuff. I urge you to watch it. This is a terrible time in our history. It's a civil war simultaneously. Our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Here we have John Hancock. John Hancock, who's a wealthy man before the war. He's accused of smuggling. There's no evidence to indicate that. He inherited some cloth making from his father. That's where he gets his wealth. One of the wealthiest men in the colonies. He signs his signature large so that John Bull, meaning England, can read it without his spectacles. We must hang together or certainly we will hang alone, says Ben Franklin. And my favorite story is Benjamin Harrison says who's very, very heavy. He's a portly man. He says to Jerry over there, Elbridge Gerry, he says, when they catch me, it'll all be over in just a moment. But you, my skinny friend, will dance on the wind for hours. They know what they're doing. If they're caught with this document, if they're caught by the British and related to this document, they're going to hang. Elbridge Gerry, I'm going to spend just a moment on him because he's worth your time and attention. He's our 5th vice president under James Madison. He's one of the founding fathers. He's the governor of Massachusetts for a while, but what do we remember him for? Gerrymandering. Where's it come from? It comes from Elbridge Gerry. Now, Gerry was not a fan of gerrymandering. He actually, when he was governor, he said, I'm not signing that. They petitioned, they got enough votes that he had to sign it, and so it went in. That's the original gerrymandering around Boston, Massachusetts. It was shaped like a salamander with wings, and so they called it gerrymandering. He did not like it. He wouldn't be happy today that that's what he's remembered for, I guarantee it. The Articles of Confederation. Look at the 3 things that the Article is going to do. They're right out of the Declaration. They're written by pretty much the same people. And it's a perpetual union. This thing hasn't ended yet. I told you last week, every once in a while I'll see a court case in the United States that references the Articles of Confederation. I'm kind of cool with that. I think that's nice. Don't forget your history. The Articles, recall that the American Revolution was still going on when the Articles are written. So if you have problems with the Articles, it's really tough to get a bunch of people together and decide on how they're going to run a government when you can be killed for talking about it or having documents. People hid documents in hollow canes. Women hid it under their skirts. So it's all done secretly. Drafting begins in 1776. Ratification is out for 1777. They get it ratified in 1781 when Cornwallis surrenders a few months later. And now we're off and running with our preamble and 13 articles. This is it. The Constitution has that wonderful preamble, we the people. Oh, it's so beautiful. Look at that. You could replace it with one word, here. From now on, we're going to call ourselves the United States of America. Now it's capitalized. This is our formal title. But each state's going to retain its sovereignty, freedom, and independence. So we're going to be kind of, how was this going to work? Oh, we're going to be bond into a firm league of friendship. If you've raised a teenage girl, she's had a term, best friends forever. How long does that last? It didn't even last that long for these people. Equal treatment and freedom of movement. Last week, Sarah Hayes said one of the things that we have as a benefit and we value is our ability to move anywhere, anytime within our nation, and they had that. 1 vote in the United States for each of the states. Everybody gets 1 vote. You can have 2 to 7 representatives, but they get 1 vote. Only the central government's allowed to do those things that we talked about at the very start. No state may engage in war. They're going to cheat at that, by the way. They do engage in war. Sometimes they're trying to engage with war with each other. They actually have militia on the border ready to invade other states before we get to the Constitution. Whenever an army is raised, military ranks will be below colonel will be named by the state. Above colonel will be named by the federal government. Expenditures will be paid by funds raised by state legislators and apportioned to the states. We asked for $10 million during the time of the Articles of Confederation. They get $2.5 million a total during that time. So they're $7.5 million. They've still got war debt. The United States and Congress have sole right to do those things we talked about, peace, war, exchange ambassadors, etc. The committee of the states, or any 9 of them, can get authorized to go away for a weekend, meet in their living room, and change this thing. Ooh, that sounds dangerous, doesn't it? Don't you kind of want people always to be together, not doing things in secret? And this one, if you remember the Tom Bodett commercial for Motel 6, we'll leave the light on for you. If Canada ever wants to join us, come on over. We're not getting along with Canada right now, but we still have this somewhere in our founding documents, so someday maybe Canada's going to come on over. The Confederation accepts all the war debts. We're hopelessly broke. We're not taking any money. We can't make taxes. We've got the old debt. We're creating new debt. And all these articles are perpetual. You can never get out of them. There is no way out, no escape. That's the motto, join or die, and they do. Why? Because the alternative is to lose this war to the British. I'll sign up for anything as long as I don't have to fight by myself. The strengths of the articles: government legitimacy. We got a centralized government, a common bond between states. Yeah, it's only friendship. Accomplishments: they have a land ordinance of 1785 where they divide the entire Northwest Territory into little townships that are divided into little squares. And this is how we're going to divide the land in the Northwest and on west for the rest of time. If you grew up west of the Mississippi, you've seen this model. Northwest Ordinance: this is way ahead of its time. There's not going to be any slavery in the Northwest. We are already moving to abolish slavery way back in the Articles of Confederation. Weaknesses: we have no chief executive, there's no law enforcement, there are no courts. Congress is it. And so Congress has to get together and agree on everything. All the executive decisions and legal decisions. They start to try to dig themselves out of this. They print their worthless currency that's called the Continental, and they say it's not worth a Continental. They're unable to tax. I told you they weren't getting any money. The debts are huge. Congress has no power to regulate interstate commerce, and the British and French start to pull us apart. They make a deal with Carolina. That's better than the deal with Virginia. Virginia merchants are starting to go under. Then we change the deal from overseas, and the states are starting to fight amongst themselves. Amendment is required by unanimous consent. This thing is going to be difficult to change. The not-so-United States are on the brink of fracturing. They're about to fall apart. We've got economic disorganization. There's people who are poor. They're starving. They want to march on the Capitol and take it over. There's a lack of central leadership, and I talked about that. And the legislative inefficiencies. You got to get these people together. You got to get them to vote. And they're actually delaying people from getting to Congress so they can't vote. This is what I talked about tonight. We're on the brink of the Constitutional Convention. America is falling apart. It tried to do this Articles of Confederation during the war. It was a lousy document. It didn't work for them. They had a couple of accomplishments in the Northwest Territory, but for the most part, it was a bad form of governance. They've learned a great deal from this. They're going to come back, and next week we're going to talk about all the marvelous changes that they're going to make when they manage to pull themselves out of the debacle that they created for themselves. That's what we'll talk about. The context, the process of the document. Since ratification is covered in the document, I'll talk very briefly about the ratification process and the interesting role that Rhode Island played in New Hampshire. And then I'll dash through the Bill of Rights, and I'll set us up for that whirlwind tour of American history the following week. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time, and I certainly thank our sponsors.